I don't have to tell you things are bad. Everybody knows things are bad. It's a depression. Everybody's out of work or scared of losing their job. The dollar buys a nickel's worth. Banks are going bust. Shopkeepers keep a gun under the counter. Punks are running wild in the street, and there's nobody anywhere who seems to know what to do, and there's no end to it. We know the air is unfit to breathe, and our food is unfit to eat. We sit watching our TVs while some local newscaster tells us that today we had 15 homicides and 63 violent crimes, as if that's the way it's supposed to be. We know things are bad, worse than bad. They're crazy. It's like everything everywhere is going crazy, so we don't go out anymore. We sit in the house, and slowly the world we're living in is getting smaller, and all we say is, please, at least leave us alone. I won't say anything, just leave us alone. Well, I'm not going to leave you alone. I want you to get mad. I don't want you to protest. I don't want you to riot. I don't want you to write to your congressman because I wouldn't know what to tell you to write. I don't know what to do about the depression and the inflation and the Russians and the crime in the street. All I know is that first, you've got to get mad. You've got to say, I'm a human being. My life has value.
Welcome to Unstacking the Deck. I'm Jason Robo.
And I'm Kyle Beatty.
And this is our episode on the media monopoly. Today's guest is Joe Shermis from the local Steelhead Special.
Yeah, we interviewed Joe Shermis discussing his experience putting out an alternative newspaper. Some of you might have seen it around town. This entire episode will be discussing the media monopoly, as Jason said, how the corporations and government entities and think tanks in charge of these news organizations, if you want to call them that, have been able to take over basically all of our channels of information and have been able to essentially mind control much of the population into going along with wars and banker bailouts and various other lies that are detrimental to all of us.
Yeah, and these tactics have been finely honed over a large extent of human history and have ultimately been finely tuned through people like Edward Bernays, who will feature in a future episode on mind control, who is the nephew of Sigmund Freud and used his psychoanalytic teachings and insights in order to finally pick the human brain to get them to do what these marketers want to do, and he's the godfather of marketing. But today we're generally going to talk about the media construct itself, how it's consolidated and controlled by a handful of people, and that most media outlets, some people would think, are independent, such as Democracy Now! And NPR, are actually controlled by the military-industrial complex and nonprofit, tax-exempt wealth shelters by the elites that carry out an agenda that is ultimately to have a one-world government and a collectivist state where everybody is all under the yoke of an international government structure.
This episode's word of the week is monopoly.
Monopoly, as defined by Merriam-Webster's dictionary, is an exclusive privilege to carry out business, traffic, or service granted by government.
Yeah, we really see this avenue of monopoly in our own system with the FCC, which grants licenses and permits to radio stations, news networks, TV networks that are allowed to broadcast, as well as telecom companies. And they're the ones that are given the exclusive rights to be able to go on air and do what they want and say what they want to say. And that's where you really see the instance of this monopoly being used, especially the collusion of government and corporations, where these corporations usually are paying off and giving bribes to the government officials in order to get their group passed through, basically.
And it's also important to note that the airwaves for our radio and television shows are actually owned exclusively by the people, and that they have effectively been hijacked by these institutions, which have said that they're guarding and preserving and maintaining a consistent form of broadcasting and that kind of thing. In reality, it was an effort to have under their control a cartel, which would strictly prohibit anything that would go against the objectives of people in higher up places.
Yeah, they claim it's a free market, but when you have, and that there's no monopolies and we have antitrust laws and everything, but when you have a situation where select groups of corporations, where many of them have board members who are on other boards of other corporations that interlock and go between each other, it really becomes a monopoly scenario where they're not allowing the voice of others. And that's why public access is such a good opportunity, because they are allowing people like us to go out and speak on television, and for all of you to have a chance to hear what we have to say.
Well, that's why our word of the day was monopoly, because that's in reality and effect what is happening. Maybe it's a low-numbered oligopoly with a handful of people, but generally it's all under certain interests, which are effectively in our country the Council on Foreign Relations, and as a larger scale, on the larger scale is the Bilderberg Group and these other elite bodies.